Okay. Um, you have never taught sync. We have like the dual contrast here. So, how has that been going? Just teaching asynchronously?
Mostly pretty well. I think, like I said in my little sticky note there, actually a little worried about going synchronous in the spring. Um, I honestly, for me, one of the big problems is remembering to keep up with them, right? Because when it's asynchronous online, it's just really easy to forget that there are human beings who like need their next discussion instructions or the next activity or whatever it is. And I have not yet been able to be on top of things enough to like totally load a course in before the semester starts. So then it just kind of runs itself. I would like to be able to do that a little bit more, but I have not yet been able to do that. It seems like every class has been something new that I've had to create from scratch, which I enjoy doing, but keeps me on my toes every week. Technology wise, I've been using Blackboard Ultra. It does the job. Like, I mean, it's not great. And of course, I link out to Google Docs. I mentioned in another slide that I try to incorporate as much opportunity for not text things, like non-alphabetic things in Blackboard. So they're recording audio, they're recording video, they're scanning and uploading visual and artistic and creative things that they've created. And Blackboard Ultra allows for that for me. So I've been using Blackboard asynchronously, excuse me.
Async. Yeah, no, I
It's
should
fine.
mention, by the way, having maligned the discussion board, I mean, I will always use Blackboard or whatever learning management system we have, but just because it's like
Yeah.
what the students are familiar with and it's sort of like what we have the best support for. It's just that,
Yeah.
what I get a little testy about is when there's the sort of implication or assumption that all of any apps we use or any kind of systems that we use are going to be funneled through Blackboard, and I just don't think that has to. I think students are savvy enough that they can sort of keep up, and have shown me in the past that they can keep up if I'm using some alternate system, parallel with Blackboard. I mean, Google Drive, Google Docs is a great example of that. I mean,
Yeah.
that it is somewhat supported by Blackboard, but it just works so much better if you just use
Yeah.
Google Drive.
And I agree. I've always loved Google Drive for a lot of things, but I've actually found in the last few semesters that there are things that I want to do in Google that I can't. So yeah, I sort of combine, right? Like I use Blackboard to the point that I can't do the thing that I want to do in Blackboard. And then I switch it out to the Google Drive, and I use Google Drive to the point that it won't let me do the thing that I want to do. And then go back to Blackboard. I did
Yeah.
come upon a little bit of a problem this semester. I tried the sort of forced what am I trying to say? Like the thing that like they can't do the next assignment until they've done the one thing. Like they can't do
Yeah.
assignment B until they've done A. I'm sorry, I can't think of the right book. I'm very tired. I can't think of the right word. But I tried that this semester because I thought, oh, there might be some good to that. And I don't want them getting ahead of each other, especially because in 812, which I'm teaching, they're working collaboratively. And so they all really kind of need to be at the same point in the work that they're doing, and that has ended up being a disaster. So I will not be doing that again. So I learned that.
No, that's great. That's great to hear. I mean, it's a good insight to have from your
Yeah.
experience. Thank you.
Or
So
Um,
Jill, it does help me, which you probably already do, to like have the modules like that. I haven't had a problem with modules release.
yeah.
But the individual assignment, because I do load everything at once,
Yeah.
but then I can like if I have all the modules closed underneath it. But you're absolutely right. When I've tried to do the like you need to do this before you do that, it seems to be a disaster. So I've given up on that too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I learned my lesson. But yeah, I do think doing it as modules would be better. Maybe one day I will be so on top of things that I will be able to preload my entire to-do list for July. Like everything on my to-do list was create your Blackboard course, Jill. And that's not what happens.
Well, but as I said in the chat, and to Heather's point, I mean, yeah, I mean, I was in my summer course, I was releasing and loading up assignments and readings as each new module would come. And quaintly, a number of the students implied that they thought this was by great pedagogical design, and not that I was like hurriedly trying to get this stuff loaded up as it, you know, like laying down train tracks as the train is coming up behind me. So
Yeah.
yes, I mean, you're not alone in that, Jill, at all, especially with, you know, especially with, in a sense, a 16-week course. I've actually been bitten when I've preloaded everything beforehand, and then it's like I get sort of halfway through and I realize I want to adjust things, and then it's like, you know, a bit of a trick fixing all the dates everywhere and whatnot. I want to quickly address Charlotte's question, and then we should move on to the next page. The answer to your question, and I don't have any hard data on this, this is just through advising sessions and through talking with students. I always talk to our new admits, like when they come into the program. It is complex. There is no consensus. You know, if you're thinking that like all of our students would really love to move back to fully in person, or all of our students like desperately want to be fully online, throw that out the window, because just to talk about a couple of the issues at stake here, you know, we have a handful, especially 3+2 students who matriculate into the program and have had most of their classes in person, and they know the professors. They want to continue that mode of delivery. And they're always asking me like, hey, is there like a fully in-person class that I can have? But that's like one portion of the population. We have a lot of the GAs who are working at the studio, like to have hybrid and online options, but they also like the notion of being able to actually go in and physically talk to faculty and be able to meet with other students, because they're on campus anyway, because they are working at the studio. And then of course we have, but here's the thing, and here's the big problem, Charlotte, is that out of state students that we have starting to apply in bigger numbers to the program, almost always their first question is, can I complete the program 100% online? And I mean, I can say yes right now, because in fact, you know, we've largely nobody's been proposing, or I haven't closely scrutinized the proposals you just submitted, but nobody's really been asking for those hybrid or blended delivery methods anymore. I mean, this past academic year, every single class was fully online, either synchronous or asynchronous. And that's students, or yes, I mean, even students in Kentucky who like live like in Western Kentucky, for example, they'll want fully online classes as well. You know, so it is this kind of like mix of different populations who like want different things. And so like, I think what we're doing right now is about the best that we can do. And there's a larger discussion to have here about pressures from the graduate school, which of course the dean of the graduate school is also the dean of online education, and like desperately wants everything to move into an 8-week e-campus model delivery method. Yeah, and I think it's all just a bad idea. And there was a huge thing that just got put in the chat.
Sorry, if you don't want us doing the chat, just holler.
No. It's so it looks pretty, yeah, that there's a similar divide. And I think this is broadly, oh, and I meant to add, by the way, this is an accessibility issue too. Because I mean, I've also had students who have sort of social anxiety disorders, or like, you know, various other things that they love having the sort of screen of fully online classes. They actually prefer asynchronous classes, you know, because then they can interact with their fellow students, but, you know, still feel safe doing so. And this is true, like with a lot of LGBTQ students, this is true. And, you know, so that's just something to be aware of. I mean, I think that we are sort of in it now in terms of online delivery. If you're asking me, Charlotte, do I think eventually we might be scaling back to having more in-person graduate courses? I mean, I hope so. I think that there is a desire for it. I mean, there's basically a market for it. I think we need to grow the program first, though, before that's going to happen, to be honest. And the problem there is that if we're going to grow the program, that's going to mean getting more out-of-state students or students from at least outside EKU. And a lot of them are actually going to trend towards wanting the online delivery.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, thank you. That's really, really helpful to hear what's going on. I kind of suspected it might be those kinds of divides that you mentioned, just knowing their student population and how we do have the 3+2 ones come in and all that. Like I said, I'm happy to keep teaching on Zoom. I think I've found a way to create a nice camaraderie or whatever that's a little bit like being around a seminar table or in a horseshoe at a classroom. So I feel like it's going okay, but you know, I'm always just interested to hear what you're learning from your side. Thanks.
Yeah. So, okay, let's just, because I want to actually touch on at least a little bit on each of these pages before we let go here. I guess, well, we'll go bottom to top. So Jill, do you want to carry on and talk about the many multimodal multimedia assignments that you've done in your classes?
Sure. I'll go as quickly as I can, actually. So I'm big on reusable assignments, and I've started doing that in most of my classes that I ask at some point for students to create some sort of multimodal thing that could be shared in the future with a specific audience of the next group of students who takes this class. I'm going to be teaching these same kind of things. What concept do you wish that you had known about, or what concept do you think they might want to know that you can tell them about? And those usually end up being, PowerPoint, Prezi, video kind of things, or maybe like an online magazine. I do a lot of options for that kind of stuff for low stakes. I rarely require it sometimes, but usually an option. So I'll say, like, you can type this out, or you can create a video, or you can just record your own audio talking about this as a response to the question, to give them options for that. And
what would you say is the split on that? I mean, how often do students do like traditional text assignments versus doing the other options?
They rarely choose to do just audio unless I say, I want you to do this as a podcast.
Okay.
They will choose either text or video. Interesting. Yeah, but rarely just audio. Like, I can't think of a single time someone has just done audio. Yeah. And then I've given them some creative things to do. Particularly, we were talking about graphic novels in 806 in the spring, and we looked at some theory about that, and I had them just like hand draw out some things. And even though we were in an asynchronous class, they could scan it, take a picture, post it for everybody to see, and talk about it. Yeah, and for final project stuff, I've had students do for that purely audio podcast series. So like, instead of a 12 to 20-page paper or whatever it is with sections, they do episode of each point, which works really well. Actually, that's what Peyton Bowling did to finish up 806 for the spring, and that I just listened to. Excellent. And it was fantastic, actually. Good. Yeah.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. As you're talking, we're going to end today because we are professors and nerds. We're going to end with a bibliography today. And I'm realizing now that I don't know why I didn't put Linda Berry on it, but I mean, everything that you're saying, like, I should have. We absolutely need to be talking more about her work. Charlotte, how about your multimodal student presentations?
Yes, I'll remember to unmute first. Yeah, pretty simple. I let them choose what sort of slide or media, software they want to use to create image, text, kind of a variety of things to go along with presentation. So I think I said, for me, let's see, what did I say? Oh yeah, research projects. Yeah, so they're all working on an extended research project in the latter half of the semester. So they all do presentations for each other on those, but they actually also have to do the multimodal presentation for article critiques. So again, they have to break down the article. I have certain very specific things they have to look for and articulate and critique about the article. And again, I want them to create slides that are sort of not just text, but image. It can be archival, it can be artwork that's relevant thematically, whatever. Like, I'm forcing them to kind of be creative with it. And it's kind of fun. I think they like, the class likes something visual there as well.
Let me ask real quick because this is actually something I'm wrestling with right now myself. For the research project, what is the process or what is the final product for that? I mean, is it a research paper or?
Were you asking me?
Yes.
all of it?
Yeah.
Oh.
For that class, like kind of what does it look there? They do the
Yeah.
research and then what do they produce out of that?
Right. Well, since I'm still teaching more of literary analysis, right, in my seminars, I do want them to write more of that conference paper type length paper. And I'm sort of doing it because we talk in the class about how, if you're interested in doing literary studies, this is a really typical document that's still created for literary conferences. It's a way scholars share their developing scholarly ideas with each other. And I know even that's starting to change a little bit in the discipline, but I mean, Heather, you were at SAW with me, and you know how most of the papers still go.
It's not. I tell students all the time, I'm like, have you been to a literature conference? We start, each person has 20 minutes and Hemingway, right?
Yeah. 10 to 11 pages type, so yeah,
Right, yeah.
I'm still
No, because I'm torn. I'm in the 801 this semester. I'm having them do I'm actually having them think about presenting their research on the web pages that they've built, and actually thinking broadly about what are more creative ways that you've done the research and you've come to conclusions. Now, how can you actually use the sort of virtual space of the web page to present that information in ways that are sort of outside the traditional I'm going to call them confines, but you know what I mean, like of either a publishable research article, or I like what you're saying about the conference paper. But it's still a valuable at the same time. I mean, yes, it is career-wise. Certainly, if they want to be in the academy in any way, they need to be able to write in that mode. So I don't want to totally abandon it. Now, one of the things I'm doing in 801 is I just gave them the call for papers for KPA, and I was like, every single one of you should submit the research project you're working on here, submit an abstract, and I have them write abstracts to actually have them practice that mode of writing. So just send that to KPA and then actually write a conference paper, so it's just to point out, it's something that I'm wrestling with myself. I don't think that we should totally abandon the traditional sort of academic writing model, but the ground is also shifting beneath our feet. I mean, and I've been to conferences where it isn't. I mean, almost nobody stands up there and reads the paper anymore. I mean, they're using PowerPoints, and it's much more kind of active. I mean, I actually went to a conference 3 years ago that I thought this was dumb, but they sent us the TED Talk guidelines, and they were like, this is what we want. And I was like, okay, but just to show that you're right. I mean, there are still conferences, literary conferences, especially where, that sort of traditional conference paper is the norm, but even that's changing, and I think we need to be cognizant of that. Heather, Pechakucha, just tell us about Pechakucha, because I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Well, so just real fast, there are kind of 3 threads in my course. The first course in 863, I know I'm using methods as examples too, because it's grad students, but the first, I tell students, you're essentially wearing 3 hats in this course. You have writing responsibilities, you have community responsibilities, and you have teacher scholar responsibilities. So there are kind of 2 end projects with these threads that are running through and crisscrossing throughout the entire course, because the students in the class, particularly MAT, are still developing their writing skills. So we're not talking about an MA-EWP population per se. They may have only had composition courses if they're middle grades, and very few literature courses and Ret Comp courses in their undergraduate careers. So I use autocartography and for the writing hat, and they are writing autocartographical essays, and in alternative weeks they are recording their writing and recording feedback to each other. So they're having conversations because this is async online. And then at the end, they develop this into a Pechakucha. Pechakucha is really a recorded PowerPoint, but it of course comes from the Japanese corporate world, in which there are specific parameters to to this PowerPoint, and this is a wonderful tool to use in the classroom as well to teach students about how to choose the most significant points and to kind of narrow down your presentation so you're not rambling like I am right now. I will say the teacher scholar bit that they do, I used to give them options of creating a website, doing different kinds of modes of production. And I found that what I do use now is what I call a DERP. This came from a historian who was on my DIS committee years ago, and I love it. It stands for Dehydrated Research Paper. And essentially, they're writing components that could be moved into a conference paper, moved into an article, moved into a multimodal presentation. They're just getting those concepts together in different components. So it's scaffolded instruction. They're writing it in a scaffolded way, and they're sharing back and forth this information. They are, I call it workshopping. I distinguish between workshop and peer review. So they are workshopping at each of these scaffolded stages. And then there is a formal peer review at the end. And I share one of my own and talk about like what those letters look like and yada, yada. So there's kind of two final projects happening simultaneously in this course.
I just put DERP onto this page because I think that's I love that idea. I had not heard that before either. So
I love to say DERP. It's fun.
Yeah. Clearly, remember when I was talking about having a plan? I was overly ambitious in what we would have time to talk about. But Dom, do you want to round this out? And then I have one more thing to say, but either the teaching portfolio or the video presentations as discussion leads.
Sure. So, well, I think the teaching portfolio part is fairly straightforward on that. So I'll skip that. Other than just to say that the goal of it is that everything that students are creating in that, I'm trying to put in the context of, I want them to create it as something that they would carry forward beyond the class. And so that's always the goal, is aiming that toward professionalization. And I do those in the two comp courses. So either in 800 or when I teach sections of 808. The video presentations as discussion leads, because I do like having, when I was having back when we did face-to-face classes, I liked having students sign up for discussion leads ahead of time, and then they would be responsible for like 2 in a semester. And I've tried this out in different ways, in different courses. Like sometimes I'll have the discussion lead writes their blog post first and then everybody else responds to it, or they're the ones that write the start on the discussion board. But what I liked back in 827, and I think we'll go back to, was they were doing reading responses, they were posting it to the blog, but I was asking the discussion lead folks to create a 5-minute video where they were focusing in on a few key points that they wanted to talk about in the reading. And the idea being that it was really focused in and narrow, right, and not to just summarize everything, but to come up with a discussion. So that had worked pretty well. And actually, listening to you all reminded me of one other thing that I had done with because I do pretty generally ask my students to do pretty traditional research papers in most of the courses, with the aim toward writing them of the length of conference length. So, encouraging them to present them to conferences. But what I also do for them then is at the end of the semester, instead of trying to ask everybody to present the entirety of their research, we do a poster session, and I ask people to make digital posters, and then they make a video. They record themselves doing a 5-minute, 3 to 5 minute poster presentation where they are talking about the key points of their findings, and it's all built around this digital poster that they've done.
As an actual logistical question, like how are they making are these videos on their phones? Are they like screencasting, or like what are they doing?
Usually for most of them, they are using Zoom, and they create a Zoom meeting with themselves and they do that. I mean, Screencast-O-Matic is great too if they have access to it, but I think fewer people have access to that now, and it has a time limit, and it does a watermark if they don't have a licensed version of it. So the Zoom version is a pretty accessible one. Folks who have other approaches, I told them they're free to use that. So some of them have their own preferred software, but that one is an easy one to use that everybody in the class has access to. And for the poster, I give them some instructions on enlarging the size of their canvas on a PowerPoint or a Google slide, and they create their poster in that.
Yeah,
And then
no,
they just set that
okay.
as,
So there's a couple of options.
just,
It sounds like,
yes.
yeah. I'm still kind of hung up on the, I've done it. We've all done it, but right, the monastic austerity of Zooming with yourself so that you can record, like it just seems so. But anyway, no, that's great. That's similar. If we had had more time on one of the later pages, I talked about VoiceThread, which I used to use really extensively, but just for various reasons, I got away with it. Got away from it. One of the things was I found that students really started to prefer to just give text responses once I started allowing them to. I mean, I had to actually require them to do voice or video. And also, it's a little clunky once you get too many video responses. But I mean, still having that kind of like, it's a good way of establishing digital presence, right? I mean, actually having video for an asynchronous class of literally seeing everybody in some capacity is great. Let me go ahead and find, I'm not going to screen share this. It's a bibliography. It's not much to look at. You can look at it on your own. But what I did was I just put together, and this is a living document, which means I didn't have time to actually get everything on here that I wanted to, but also my hope is that you all should, and I should have done this like 3 years ago, right? But just creating this space for us to put on any kind of scholarship of teaching and learning, or anything that seems relevant to any of the topics that we've been talking about tonight. There's a lot of articles on here about writing across curriculum and writing centers and their relationship to the rest of higher ed, and careers in writing centers, because that was something I was really focusing on. Just to clarify, what's on here right now is basically a lot of the founding documents of the program, because this is what I included in a report that I gave to then Dean Sarah Ziegler as we were proposing the program. And, this is really what kind of won her and Jerry Pagashnik over, that this would be a good switch over. So a lot of these articles are what I was using as I was talking to them. So yeah, but I mean, there's a couple of ones that are on there that I've added subsequently, and we should keep adding to this list of articles talking about how we're going to shift the MA program into something that is, I mean, still talking about broadly English studies, literature, literacy, critical reading, critical communication, rhetorical awareness. But I mean, really with an eye to moving away from, we have to stop assuming that all of our students are either going off and teaching K through 12 or going on to PhD programs, because that's just not tenable anymore. And we need to actually also start directing them keep directing them into different positions. But I will stop there because it's already 4 minutes past what I said I'd keep you. So any last minute questions, comments? I appreciate you all. Really. You take care. We'll see you soon.